I think we're good. Yes. I just restarted my browser, so it's going to take some time to load. Uh-huh. cþの声生まれて初めて聞いた。いや、そのいうリオさん。Yeah, the last stream was the first time I've revealed my voice in a while. Yeah, so between the last stream and this one, I started working on Project Elaine, which seeks to reform Ŋarâþ Crîþ morphophonology. And I guess I'll read this off. The phonotactics of Ŋarâþ Crîþ distinguish between simple and complex codas, where complex codas may occur only at the end of a word. If orthology causes a complex coda to occur word medially, such as by adding a suffix, and the bridge containing this coda cannot be reinterpreted as one without a complex coda, then a set of coda simplification rules takes place to remove the word medial complex coda. During Project Cladrius, it has been observed that some bridges such as cþ and fapa rarely occurred to the degree that stem fusion with stems ending in such bridges are difficult to define. During Ŋarâþ Crîþ Corner number 0x0, I've proposed the idea of restricting the set of valid bridges to a subset of all coda onset combinations. To find what bridges are worth saving, I decided to analyze frequencies of bridges in a corpus of cþCD2 texts, but this has not yet provided much insight. Originally, Project Cladrius was meant to revise the noun declension system, but the proposal of an operation that would make a stem have a valid coda such that a suffix beginning with a consonant could be attached to it, and the refinement of the idea into the current notion of stem fusion has expanded the scope of the project and made me question if the current orthophonology of Ŋarâþ Crîþ was adequate. Yeah, I better correct that before I forget about it. Yeah, so I decided to find which bridges should be valid, and I have the results on this spreadsheet. Let me find it. So some of these cells are gray, which means that the bridges are non-canonical, such as a la coda followed by null onset that should be parsed as a null coda plus a la onset by the maximal onset principle. And marked off the cells where the coda is null, ra, or la, which means that they should always be valid. And here I've specified some of the bridges as invalid because they undergo sound changes to make them less awkward to pronounce. So I guess we'll convert these to a list of rules during the stream later, but I'm also going to introduce the concept of starts and ends. So Project Cladrius has formalized the notion of a stem, namely as a sequence of one or more syllables plus an onset. That is, the beginning of the stem marks the syllable boundary, while the end of the stem marks the boundary between the onset and the following nucleus. So that's the green border here. Some operations are possible on some types of ends but not others. For instance, ending a word or adding a suffix such as 10 is not possible on an onset end, but adding a suffix such as, oh, I forgot to switch the window, so let's go ahead and do that. And stem fusion is a way to provide equivalence of performing the first two operations I just listed on an onset end. So ending a word that's replaced with fusing the stem with an empty consonant and adding a suffix that starts with a consonant that's replaced with fusing the stem with that consonant, then adding the rest of the suffix. Affixes also have starts and ends. Prefixes always have syllabic starts and suffixes always have syllabic ends. A sequence of letters making an affix might be compatible with multiple types of starts or ends. For instance, may have either syllabic or onset start depending on the context. And I should add here that I've also thought of having another type of end called a terminal end, where you can't stick syllables to the end anymore. So let me add some information about that. Additionally, there is another type of end called a terminal end, to which morphemes with syllabic starts not be attacked. This end is produced by the presence of a complex coda at the and let me switch to my editor here. Valid bridges. Subsections, situations, are invalid and must be repaired. Concatenation. Of so that's the single cell over here. Let me see how that renders. is repaired might need further repair by later rules. Yeah, that's something important to keep in mind, since some bridges such as cþ have multiple rules applied to them. Namely, cþ gets corrected to cþ by fortification and then gets metastasized to cþ. Yeah. So, cþ is to cþ after the cþ and phi set to ga after and this is more limited. It's just ta ka and fa, and that I should note that this also applies to the respective onsets with ra or la. And chala. Alright. Why am I pronouncing this as ha when it's actually r? R, ra, and r, la are fortified analogously. And here, all ra and all la are fortified analogously. And the next rule I've specified in the spreadsheet is metathesis. So let's go over that. Yeah. Takai is, if we go back over to the spreadsheet and look at the cells here, kata is cþ is corrected to cþ, but also tga is corrected to kda. And here we have this same thing. We've performed the fortification, but we still need to perform metathesis because we've ended up with tga and tga. And analogously for this, the onsets with ra and na. Tga are metathesized to kta and kda respectively. And by the way of having ka followed by da sounds weird to you, it's just, let me copy. And here we have a different kind of metathesis. But we're going to cover that later. Why do I have the F9i window open over here? By the way, I've been working on F9i trying to see how I should represent morphemes in a pre-syllabified manner, so. But let's continue over here. The next one have nasal assimilation. Assimilation. Before onset. It's to not. And ka onset assimilates to here. Here. But la. Yeah, better specify what happens to as well, even though it's not that common. Yeah, didn't mean to put a hat on that. Yeah, this is what it's this is what it's supposed to be. The next one, denasalization. Yeah, I think that should apply to Ŋarâþ and cþCD2. Denasalization of yeah, so the only place where it's where occurs as an onset, it doesn't have any coda before it, at least in the corpus that I ran the statistics on. Ŋarâþ, and by the way, I'm considering whether to promote cþ to a simple coda. Currently it's a complex coda, and currently complex codas can be temporarily formed during morphology word medially, but they're simplified during the conversion to layer 1. But here I'm considering avoiding this situation in which a complex coda occurs in the middle of a syntactic word. So you can still have one right before a click boundary, but you can't have an affix attaching to it. At least not one starting with a consonant. But if we switch over to this window, right now I have cþ in the coda of the first person plural affixes. So if we have a verb like chat, then check would mean we eat, but we can have further affixes after it, such as menchechle, that's the stem, then the first person plural exclusive, then the third person singular celestial object marker. So we eat it. And we can also have a tense markers, which is ta after this suffix in this case. So we already have a situation in which we put an affix after one containing a complex coda, and it's not a terribly unusual situation. So that's one reason why we might want to provide an allowance for that coda to appear in non-terminal syllables. Getting back onto this topic, is ga is denasalized to ga. Okay, for the next rule, there are a lot of situations with devoicing. So this concerns mainly the onsets containing va or the. Both of them are voiced fricatives. Oops. And so voicing of va and Ŋarâþ ta ka and fa voices to and the voices to tha. Additionally, the is voiced sa. This process occurs analogously for the onset vara vala vara and vala. Also, if you want to view this spreadsheet, then here's the link. Yeah, and there are some more troubles to sort out. Like in this one, the original coda is Ratha Vara. And okay, things do get complicated with the Ratha coda. As well as the tha coda. Thra. Why isn't it right? Except that after the and the become the that the is deleted before Baran Vala. Additionally, consonant ra ones. A lot of layer 0 strings over here. Yeah, let me add as a special case to the nasal assimilation. Not paired to not instead. Rules. Yeah. Should Kagara be degeminated as well? For now, I'm not going to degeminate them. Before route corrected to flirora. And I think that covers all of the rules, at least until I add cþ as a simple coda, where simple means anything can be, any full syllables can be appended to it at all, even if in practice any bridges with that as a coda get corrected. Also, if we're not allowing the situations in which a medial complex coda to occur at all, then what happens when it occurs right before a clitic boundary? So that's something that should be explored later on. But I think these they're surprisingly simple, actually. What happens if you add cþ to the list of simple codas? So I'll pivot the view back to the spreadsheet. Obviously, if that's the only thing in the bridge, then it can be interpreted as an onset. So this is non-canonical, and these two cells are, since if you have cþ ra, for example, then you can put ka in the coda and tha and ra in the onset. So we have cþ ka. Let me temporarily write in the results for each of these, at least for the single consonant onsets. cþ cþg cþp t cþch cþd cþ cþr cþr. Obviously, these two would be corrected to cþk and cþg by the partition rules. Metathesis is well, it obviously doesn't participate in nasal assimilation. What about devoicing? Yeah, I could definitely see these being changed, since for cþ you have it pronounced as which is a lot more breathy than th alone. So this is a no-brainer. What about these nasalization? Na, 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 ga. Yeah, I think that would apply as well. Obviously, for the devoicing before va, ra, va, la, and va, la, we're probably gonna need special rules to handle cþ just the way we did for ratha. Tarsa. What about before tha? Yeah, and I also mentioned that I was thinking of doing something with the sa bridge, since that is when I encountered this that is when I was looking at chat messages from the Chilean dictionary bot on Discord. I think the exact word that got me thinking was cþCD2. And it reminded me of how awkward Chilean's phonotactics were. And that Q is a valid coda. That's probably the most awkward thing about it. Yeah, this is something I need to look at too. So let me write a to-do log in the Discord channel. Should cþCD be legal? I mean, it has a duplicated ka, but it also sounds fine. It was a complex coda previously, so let's see how it was treated. Aha, it turned into tha when it was before an obstruent, when it was followed by a nasal, then that it and the nasal word turned to natha, and if it was before something that wasn't an obstruent or a nasal, then it turns into tha and metathesized with the consonant. So I don't think this rule ever applies actually, since these are the only three consonants that are neither obstruents or nasals under the eyes of complex coda simplification. And, well, if it's followed by la, then that's a valid bridge with a simple coda. You don't need this rule or any of them. If it's ra, then the same. If it's la, sa, then that only occurs at the start of the word, so you don't need that either. So we can actually remove this rule. Yeah, but that only gives us a hint at what we should be doing. Should. So for example, here we could turn katha into tha first, then perform the fortification and we get tha ka, or we could perform the fortification to katha ka, then get rid of, then simplify katha to tha, and we also get tha ka in that case. Here, however, if we perform CCS for the CCS rules first, then katha ga becomes natha and we're done. But if we perform the denasalization first, then that's katha ga, which simplifies to tha ga. Hmm. I kind of like this approach, though. It's not just two rules that say, oh, cþ should turn to th before an obstruent. You have all these different rules applying first. Yeah, but first, I should figure out what to do with the sa onset and also thasa. Oh yeah, I almost forgot that kakafa and such should simplify to kafa through degemination, so it's not that they're degeminated before a liquid, strictly speaking. It's degeminated before another consonant in the onset. For instance, Fafara is corrected to Fara, of course, but Kaka Sa is corrected to Kasa. And it would also be nice to have a table showing all these combinations as it does in the spreadsheet, so you wouldn't have to visit the spreadsheet if you didn't want to for some reason. Is there anything else I want to cover? Yeah, I should probably clarify some things in the document I have here. Complex quotas. That is word meal. I should specify S word medial. Complex quotas are never produced in the first place. Yeah, and I'll go ahead and push these changes. Comment. Valid bridges. By the way, Rio, you're welcome to join the Discord if you want. The invite link is in the description. I don't really have anything else to talk about right now. So, for those of you watching, thanks for being with me until now, and I'll see you next week. Thank you.